How many times have you been in this situation? You love lovey-dovey romantic comedies, but your partner loves horrifying, disgusting slasher films. If only there was a way to combine these genres into one experience. Well, this is your lucky day. Directed by Josh Rubin, Heart Eyes finds Olivia Holt and Mason Gooding, two co-workers, falling into the tropes of all the typical rom-coms, while also running from a masked serial killer. Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel, and welcome to my review of Heart Eyes. Now, going into this film, I knew exactly two things about it. Number one, it has Mason Gooding, who most of us know as Chad from Scream 5 and Scream 6, a character that I really liked. Big fan of the Core 4, which is an opinion I know not everybody shares, but personally, I like their dynamic, and Chad may have been my favorite character out of the four. And the second thing is that this is another movie with like the holiday horror twist that seems to be very popular over the last couple years. Like, of course, we have our classics like Black Christmas. We don't talk about either of those remakes. We have My Bloody Valentine. We don't talk about 3D. But, you know, those were more of like products of the 80s. It seems to be like picking up steam again here in the 2020s. And I was very morbidly curious about this movie because if I'm being honest, I'm very 50-50 with this subgenre. Like, It's a Wonderful Knife from 2023 really didn't land for me, and I wanted to love it with Justin Long, but it didn't work, whereas I really did enjoy Eli Roth's Thanksgiving from that same year. So I was very curious how I would feel about this movie after watching it. And overall, this is way more fun than I thought it would be. If I'm being fully honest, I kind of went into this expecting to hate it, and I didn't at all. Like, all things considered, I think this movie did a nice little fusion dance of two genres that on paper probably don't belong together. And just so you know what you're getting into, make no mistake, while this is a romantic comedy slasher, the larger focus here is on the rom-com side of the story. And on one side, this is a very cliched type of rom-com. You know, the story is basically, aside from the killer, the story is basically, he's the hunky guy at the coffee shop, she finds out that they're now working together. She hates love, she doesn't believe in true love, but he loves love. Where could this story be going? Hell, there is even a full-on montage of her trying on, like, different outfits for a work dinner with him that is ripped, like, straight out of a 90s rom-com. But the reason it works so well in this movie is because it is played so tongue-in-cheek. Like, they know what they're doing here. They play into some of the more ridiculous elements and tropes of romantic comedy movies. They kind of have fun with that premise. This kind of feels like what Scream did back in the day, like making fun of slashers and horror tropes, but they just did that for rom-coms instead. Also, this is not the last time I will mention this movie having something in common with Scream, but we'll get to that. And trust me, I know, in a lesser film, what they do with the rom-com stuff could come off extremely groan-inducing, and to be fair, it might still come off that way to some people in this movie. There are a few moments that were even a little bit too much for me. I obviously came into this more for the slasher elements than the rom-com stuff. But the chemistry between Olivia Holt and Mason Gooding is what really carries the day here for the central romance. They are the whole reason that what they're trying to do with this movie works. If you had two actors with like zero chemistry, this movie could have been real bad, but they are just great on screen together. You can see these two actors are actually having fun. There's some pretty genuinely funny and awkward moments that you would have with somebody that, like, you kind of, you know, you're attracted to, but you still feel weird around because you're just getting to know each other. And throughout the runtime, you really do believe that these two people are starting to form a connection.
Happy Valentine's Day.
Happy V-Day!
Get killed, all right? What was...
Why would he say that?
Now, on the horror side of things, which is what I signed up for, I mean, this isn't a channel about romantic comedies, the Heart Eyes killer is pretty badass. Like, I'm not saying we have a new slasher icon on our hands by any means, maybe after a few more movies, but I'm not saying after one movie he's definitively a slasher icon, but, I mean, the dude is big, He's intimidating, he's scary, he comes at you fucking full speed, he is brutal, and this is not a guy that you ever want to see in a dark alley. He also has like the Jason from the Friday the 13th remake too, where like every one of his boot steps are just fucking boom. Boom. I don't know why I like that little touch so much, but I really do. He has a couple of like really good set pieces in the vineyard, in the police station, at the drive-in theater. But man, that opening scene at the vineyard really sets the stage for what to expect every time we see this guy on screen. And what you can expect is a lot of blood and a lot of violence. This feels like a movie tailor-made to like drop itself down to a PG-13 to get like, you know, more people of a younger age, a wider audience, kind of like Megan did. And I am so glad they didn't do that. They stuck with their hard R, and man, they definitely earned it. Now, do I think the impact of the killer is impacted a few times because of these weird jokes or quips that are made like while he's chasing these people? I do. And elements of this movie may disappoint you personally, but I highly doubt the Hard Eyes killer or the kills will be one of those things. Now, where the movie lost me a little bit and why my score is not going to be as high as it could have been is two main elements. The one I just touched on, but the comedy is very 50-50 for me. Like, while it really works on the rom-com side of things, like making fun of that stuff tongue-in-cheek, it really didn't work on the horror slasher side of things. Like, there are moments where the people running from the Hard Eyes killer should be terrified. Us as the audience should be feeling that tension. We should be scared for them. But they play it a little too cutesy. Like, there's a moment where they're at the drive-in theater, and so they jump in a car to hide from him, and while he's right outside their window, she just turns to him and she's like, you know, this should be the worst day of my life, but it's not, because you're here. And then he's all like, ditto. And it was just like, did we really need that moment at that time? Like, this should have been a way more tense scene, and it really wasn't. And that's just one of like a handful of examples that they do in this movie that really take away from the terror. So while I liked half the comedy, I think they should have reined it in for the slasher side and really just made that like as scary as possible. And then the second thing that is gonna drop my score a little bit is definitely the third act of this movie. Like, this feels like a film that really would have benefited by being about 10 to 15 minutes shorter, but instead we got this extra tacked on scene at a church that was definitely going for like a Scream style ghost face reveal. And I know you have to do that with like a whodunit type slasher, but the problem is, without spoilers, is it just really has no impact. As far as the killer we get and their motives, I would say it's extremely weak at best. Like, if I line this up with all of the Ghostface reveals and put them like in a ranking, this would definitely be last place by a good margin. Yes, even worse than Scream 6. But even with those two things mentioned, all in all, I had a really good time with Hard Eyes. Like, this movie was way more fun than it had any right to be. The two leads had great chemistry together, and the way that they played some of the humor, very tongue-in-cheek, really worked for me, and it saved what definitely could have been like an eye-rolling, groan-inducing kind of cringe fest. But hands down for me, the best thing about this movie, it was the kills, it was the brutality, it was the Hard Eyes killer. Like, as far as a slasher villain, I think they absolutely nailed it. I would definitely love to see more of this character, and with the story they had here, it could easily be done, and it could be a prequel, it could be a sequel, and both would work. So I'm going to give Hard Eyes a surprising 6.5 out of 10, and I'm going to recommend you go see this movie, whether you have a partner this February or not.
I'm just so lonely.
Alright guys, but that is going to do it for my full thoughts on Hard Eyes, my spoiler-free thoughts. As always, if you've seen the movie, drop it in the comments. Let me know what you thought of this genre-bending kind of movie. Two genres that I didn't think should go together, but this movie really makes them work. Did it work for you as well as it did for me? Did you have issues with the comedy, or did you like that the whole way through? Or did you really just not like this movie? If you have not seen it yet, let me know if you plan on going to see it, if you have any level of excitement for it. And for everybody, let me know how this would rank on like your list of holiday horror type movies. As always, while I have you, me and two friends do a weekly pop culture podcast called Culture Shocked. Links for that will be down in the video description here. If you have a long commute to work, if you are a podcast listener, give it a download. Let me know what you think. Also, if you enjoyed this review, be sure to give it a thumbs up to help bump it up in the old YouTube algorithm. Subscribe somewhere down here so you don't miss any future content on the channel. And as always, we will see you in the next one.
You good?
Yeah.